What's up? Welcome back to Weekly What's Up with Wigwam. I am, of course, always with Wigwam, and I am also, of course, sick. Been sick for a while, but not gonna let that stop me from recording videos, so let's get into it. I guess this week's underlying theme would be garbage. We're gonna talk about how ProJared ended up being garbage, how Detective Pikachu ended up not being garbage, and how everybody thinks it's fun to say Game of Thrones is garbage. Let's get into it. So first up, we're gonna talk about the ProJared drama, because of course we are. It's been a big thing all week. If you don't really know who ProJared is, well, there's really no point looking it up now, because his career is over, and he's terrible. But he just made decent content for a very long time. He used to be back on Screw Attack back in the day. He's been around on YouTube and in the gaming sphere for a very long time, and someone that I had watched previously, never again. So it all started May 8th when ProJared posted this onto his Twitter page saying basically that he was getting a divorce and that, you know, people make up rumors when you're getting divorced about what happens and that people shouldn't listen to rumors because rumors aren't true. But instead of rumors, what we got was the next morning was his wife posted this instead that pretty bluntly puts it that Jared had been cheating on her with Holly Conrad for a while. He also blocked his wife before she even had a chance to respond, so she didn't even see the initial announcement. She just knew that he had posted something, because Jared is garbage, but he's not just so garbage as to cheat on his wife, which is plenty garbage enough on the garbage scale, but he wanted to make sure he placed like an all-time high score, so he had to go for a little something extra, a little spice on the fire. Within this thread of his wife describing how Jared was cheating on her for months with Holly Conrad, it turns out that a lot of his fans started coming out of the woodwork talking about how he had solicited pictures from them through Snapchat or Tumblr. A Tumblr that his wife had even originally known about in the beginning that was framed around body positivity, but apparently was not so much about body positivity, it's just about bodies for Jared, because Jared is a creepy bastard. There's also some talk about whether or not these women were even of age. He may have been grooming girls as young as 16. So that's neat. He had a private Snapchat, a private Tumblr, and a private phone from which he hid all of these details from his wife. So while all of this was unfolding around us, Peanut Butter Gamer jumped in and tried to defend Jared against his ex-wife, saying, "You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe people shouldn't just listen to this one-sided story." And then people were like, "Hey, Peanut Butter Gamer, I don't know if you saw this thing about the grooming young women and stuff," and then he was like, "That's my bad. I'm gonna take that back. I'm taking back that statement I said. That's not it, bro. That's not it, Chief." And he did. So he apologized for that. Again, he was just trying to defend his friend from a situation that he'd been lied to. Jared had been not only gaslighting and lying to his wife, but to his friends as well. So he was in a skewed reality because Jared is a master manipulator, apparently. Peanut Butter Gamer apologized to his wife, Heidi, and it seems like things are all good on that aspect. Things are not good on the ProJared subreddit though, where they immediately banned Jared from his own subreddit so he couldn't moderate it, and now it is a monument to his colossal garbageness, which will eternally live on in the echoes of the internet, as all of the top posts of all time are now posts about how awful Jared is, which is great, cause he is terrible, and he should feel bad about it for a long time. And while it's not really the worst thing to come out of this, because, you know, of all the grooming and him cheating on his wife and destroying his marriage and ruining a bunch of people's lives and being a terrible person, at least a negative thing that affected a lot of people, as a lot of us are now unfortunately members of the I've Seen ProJared's Penis Club, because there were illicit pictures not just talked about in the Twitter threads, but posted for proof. So now I'm part of that club. Thanks a lot, Jared. Jared also set the record for the most subs ever lost in one day, dropping below 1 million subs back into 900,000. And then because he's so terrible at everything, he then lost that record to James Charles like 2 days later, who lost 1 million subs in one day, which is a drama that is also amazingly terrible but has nothing to do with our gaming sphere of the internet, so I'm not going to talk about that one. You'll have to look up another video if you're just here for the spicy YouTube drama. And while it's certainly interesting to talk about all this drama, it's certainly been insane to watch all of this unfold about someone that I had followed on YouTube for a very long time. Just just important to remind everybody out there that there are very real people involved. His wife is a very real person, that if you want to offer support to these people, please keep it positive, and please don't even mention all the terrible things they're going through. Don't bring it up, don't throw it in their face. But it's great to offer them some sort of positive support, but support them in good ways by supporting Heidi's cosplays, or if you want to support Ross, whose ex-wife was the one who was cheating on ProJared with, then support Ross's work. Don't support him by bringing it up and just throwing it in his face over and over and over again. Support them in positive ways, people. Remember, these are real people affected by this situation, and it's a lot of their faults that Jared turned out to be the giant piece of sentient human garbage that he ended up being. And finally, I'd also like to say, just as a general PSA, nobody's impressed if you didn't know who ProJared was before, so don't brag about that. The only thing that matters is if you were a fan of Jared before, that you take his actions to heart and that you don't support him any longer and you don't let people get away with these kind of terrible actions. Again, if you didn't listen to him before, it means nothing to you, but if you were a fan, this is a time to not be a fan. Moving on from the human piece of garbage, let's talk about a thing that ended up being surprisingly not garbage, which was Detective Pikachu, a movie that I had very medium to lowish hopes for that ended up being pretty much in that range, but it was alright. It was definitely alright. So we now somehow live in a world where there is a live-action Pokemon movie starring Ryan Reynolds, voice of Deadpool, as a talking Pikachu. And I just think, you know, sometimes the world's not all bad. So I went and saw Detective Pikachu in theaters, and it was entertaining for me. The acting was a spectrum. Certainly some of the acting was a lot better than others. Ryan Reynolds nailed it. He absolutely killed it. He's pretty much fantastic in anything he's in, and I have to imagine a good portion of his writing must have been ad-lib. Some of the jokes were just so above and beyond clever compared to the rest of the writing for the movie that I would have a hard time believing that they weren't, at least to a point, improv by the master himself. The main kid, Justice Smith, does a pretty good job with the material he's given. The material he's given is not great, but he does a good job on the deliveries, and I felt like he really gave a good performance for the most part. Catherine Newton also does alright, again, given the context of the crap writing she received. Some of the lines from her were definitely a lot more stilted and awkward than from Justice Smith on average, but I've seen her in other things. I know she's a talented actress, so I'm gonna just have to chalk it up to being given material that maybe was aimed a little too kid-friendly. Pretty much anybody who wasn't on the principal cast, though, was pretty mad. Nobody did such a bad job that I, like, completely focused on them. Some of them were a little cartoony, or stereotypes, like the police officers, or the guy running the battles in the underground battle league thing. They were all pretty cheesy and funny, but entertaining. They weren't totally out of place in this movie, though, so I didn't mind it too much. The story is pretty much the safe, family-friendly fare that you're coming to expect going into this movie. You know, it's not rated PG-13, and it tries to appeal to the whole family, kind of shooting straight down the middle, but it definitely airs a little more on the kids' side, especially in the plot. The plot is very simple and basic. It has a few twists towards the end. Most of the large twists you'll see coming a mile away, but a couple of the minor twists may actually catch you by surprise. There's quite a few nice little plot beats towards the end, so even if you could see them coming though, I felt that they were enough to keep me entertained. But the number one reason to go see this movie isn't for the plot or the acting or anything else, it's to go see the Pokemon. This movie is good for kids, but it's good for adults who are very big fans of the Pokemon series, and that's the enjoyment that I got out of it. The world that they've created with the Pokemon living together with people in a realistic and believable world was just incredible. It's totally separate from what you're used to seeing in the anime, which is this like countryside weird mix of like some technology when it's convenient, but mostly it feels like it was set in the late 1800s, and that's just weird. It's a weird balance. This movie really nails and feels a lot more like modern day with Pokemon, and I'm sure if you dug and scraped at it a little too much, the thin layer of suspension of disbelief that makes it all work would probably peel away pretty quickly. But if you come into it just trying to enjoy the movie for what it is, a fun, family-friendly Pokemon movie, and just let yourself enjoy it, you're gonna have a lot of fun immersing yourself in this Pokemon world. And I think that's what we all really wanted from a live-action Pokemon movie, was just to make the Pokemon, at least just for a couple hours, feel like they could really be real in a way that I think a lot of us haven't felt since we were kids, when our imaginations could run wild and it was easy for us to think about which Pokemon partners we would have if we got magically sucked into the game one day. It's just something that you don't get as an adult, and that movie, I feel, really captured that feeling, which is why I really enjoyed the movie so much. If anything, my number one gripe is just that the trailer simply showed too much. I think about 80% of the jokes and about 99% of the Pokemon were all shown in the trailer. So if you've seen all the trailers, all like 7 minutes of trailer footage that they've put out prior to the release of this movie, just know that you've probably seen most of the jokes taken out of context already. Most of them will still land, but if you're like me, you'd be like, well, this would have been a lot better if I had seen it in context first and not stripped out into a trailer. Same thing with Pokemon, you've seen the majority of them were shown off in the trailers, so seeing them again in context can be great. If that's something that you don't think you can enjoy at that point, that it's been spoiled too heavily for you, that's a valid concern. The trailers definitely went way too far. And finally, we're going to talk about one last garbage thing, Game of Thrones. Fans. I am so tired of the fans incessantly whining about the 8th season of Game of Thrones. I wasn't going to try to get too opinionated on this last piece, but I can't help it. It's just gotten to the point where it's tediously annoying. Yes, Game of Thrones' final season has certainly been a bit rocky, and it has certainly been a bit rushed, and the pace has felt a bit off. But what a lot of people are not giving credit to is that the show has come to an end. The story beats have come to an end. DB and DB felt like the show needed to come to an end, that they couldn't drag out the plot lines they had been given by George R.R. Martin any further. And again, a lot of the fans, this is probably my number one annoyance with the fans, is that they forget that most of the major plot points have been given directly to DB and DB, the showrunners, by George R.R. Martin himself. They're acting like DB and DB have completely squandered the show, when in actuality they're just, yes, telling things at a bit of an accelerated pace, but when things have been set up for seasons at a time, maybe you just have to dig a little deeper and draw some inferences to tell what actually makes sense in context of the entire show and where things are ending up and what actually is a valid complaint, because there's plenty of valid complaints, I would say. I have my own concerns with it, but I'm also gaining a lot of enjoyment out of the show. Until I happen to go online, and I don't even go to these places where this incessant whining fest is happening. They just rise to the front page of Reddit and Twitter and everywhere. It's gotten so bad that they've turned the more memey subreddit Free Folk into a Lord of the Rings subreddit, which is, I'll give you, hilarious, but a little petty. Overall, a lot of people are saying that the writing has made them mad, but to me, I guess what it comes down to is that we've crossed the point where we're complaining so much about the show that people are complaining about everything they see on the screen, whether it's a valid complaint or not. Nobody's stopping to actually think, does this make sense? Was this actually bad writing? Was this actually out of character? It's just, I see the thing, I complain about the thing on the internet, and it's just this annoying little circle jerk online. So I'd just like to say, let people, including yourself, enjoy stuff. There's nothing wrong with enjoying stuff, you know? But those are just my opinions. I'm sure many of you feel very strongly about Game of Thrones yourself, so why don't you let me know down below in the comments why Game of Thrones has made you so mad over the last couple weeks. I'd love to hear it. It'd be very fascinating to me to get differing opinions. I do love the discussion back and forth on Game of Thrones, and we can have actual valid discussions of our critiques back and forth. That is great and constructive. It's just the incessant whining that's driving me crazy. Like the new Mad Queen. But hey, that's the weekly What's Up with Wigwam. That was what was up with me this week. So, why don't you let me know what's up with you this week down below, along with the Game of Thrones stuff, and catch you guys in the next one. We'll see what happens. We'll see who lights the internet on fire this next week, and who is gonna do what. Like, cheat on their wife, or like burn down an orphanage, or who's gonna top this? It's a new competition. Maybe Scott the Walls will be a serial killer.